got two ways of approaching life. You can approach it from this perspective of nothing matters, because we're going to decay and die like any animal, and that sucks because there's no other animal that's self-aware the way that we are. There's no other animal that's self-conscious the way that we are. It just doesn't seem fair that we're going to die like a slug. And so therefore nothing matters. Or you could approach it from another perspective, which is, I don't know if nothing matters. But if nothing matters, then what's the worst case scenario if I live like it does matter? You can't go wrong if you live like it matters. It might turn out that everything matters. What's the worst case scenario of believing that your life has no meaning and you live that way? It's a wasted life, man. It's terrible for not just you, but everybody around you. And it makes no positive difference. What if it turns out that you live like you do believe it, that you do believe that your life has meaning and purpose to it, and it turns out it doesn't? You won't know otherwise, because you'll be dead, but all the while, you'll be living a positive life that positively impacts people around you. But what if it turns out that you live as though you believe that your life has meaning, and then it turns out it does? That's an incredible win, man. Maybe keep living as though you believe that your life has a meaning and a purpose to it. And keep living until you find it, because it's there. And if it turns out I'm wrong, and there is no meaning and purpose in it, at least you'll have lived a positive life. So, I guess what I'm saying is bet on red. I read this and I don't see what the problem is. You know, like he begins many people. He doesn't say all people, but many people go through life with hardly an original thought. I was talking to one of our APs here a few years ago. His name is Mr. Salazar. I like Salazar a lot. I respect him. He's a really sharp dude. He's a principal somewhere now. I'm not sure where, but he's a principal somewhere in the district. And I asked him at one point, because he was doing his PhD, I asked him, what percentage of your thoughts do you think are actually yours, like original to you, versus they're just thoughts that you've taken in? And he was thinking about it. I asked him, what do you think, like 5%, 3%? And he just shakes his head and he goes, not even that, maybe 1/10%. And he was thinking about it and he just goes, that's an incredible thought. Because when you're pursuing much higher education, we kind of assume people must have original thoughts, but that's not really the case. Most people are other people, and most people are repeating the thoughts of others. Now, the question becomes, so what? What's wrong with that? If someone before you got it right, does that mean that therefore we shouldn't be saying it anymore? We should be living by it? Martin Luther King Jr. comes along and says we should judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Do we sit there and go, oh, you just believe that because he said it? No, of course. If there are good ideas that came before us, we should adopt the good ideas. In fact, the bigger problem that we have in life, probably especially at the moment, is that we don't adopt ideas that came before us because they came before us. Oh, those are old ideas. I don't know, they've served us pretty well for 300,000 years. But they're old ideas. Okay. But continuing on the rest of these, if you don't have an original thought, that's fine. That's fine. We oftentimes get, oh, you just dress the way you dress because everybody else does it. Yeah, it's called fitting in. It's called adopting social norms. Why? Because it makes life simpler. What's the alternative? To try to live your whole life trying to buck the system and somehow overcome it just so you can express something that you're really not? Because let's face it, most people are other people, and most people are also average. Society becomes what it becomes because most people are a certain way. Now, if you are in the category of most people, well, then there's nothing wrong with being what you are. For some reason, we try to make people feel terrible about being like everybody else. Now, if you're a person who's not like everybody else, well, that is hard. Because if you're being forced to conform, or you feel like you're being forced to conform, but the truth is that you're not really being forced to conform. It's an internal pressure inside of you that makes you feel like you want to because you want to be accepted. Now, is there a value to being accepted? Yeah, it does make life simpler. It really does. But what if you're not accepted? Well, at least you get to be yourself. Stop me if you've heard this before. Life is suffering. And you don't get to choose not to suffer. But you can choose for the suffering of conforming to be like everybody else, or you can suffer for refusing to conform and be like everybody else. It's your call which way you're going to suffer. If you're just like everybody else, you can suffer from the mental distress of realizing that you're average when you want to be more than that, or you can try really hard to be something that you're not and try to be non-average, in which case you're going to suffer for not being who you really are. So much of the suffering that we encounter, it's because we just approach it from the wrong mindset. Like I was talking to somebody yesterday, we had a quiz in one of my classes, and no, that's not true. She had a quiz in another class, and she was like, oh, stressing, like, oh, I don't know if I'll be ready. And I said, dude, I don't know, man. Look at how you view quizzes. Look at how you view tests. Do you view them as, oh no, what if I don't know the information? What if I don't know? What if you approach it from the perspective of, good, an opportunity for me to show what I know? If you're writing an essay, oh good, this will give me a chance to show off the ideas that I've been thinking about. Now, of course, if you haven't been thinking about ideas, if you haven't been studying, then there is something to be afraid of. But even then, it's not really to be afraid of it, because all that a test is going to do in that case is expose the truth, which is that you aren't thinking about ideas and that you weren't prepared for the test. That's not a terrible thing. It's good, because it's the truth. Think about what it is that the alternative would be. Cheat and then get by on something that's not true, but that's not truth. It puts you on the wrong side of the universe. Instead, it gives you an opportunity to see the consequences, because one of the worst things that we can do is shield people from the consequences of our actions. Imagine if you got away with everything in your life and you never got caught, how it is that you would be. I don't know, I imagine I'd be a horrible person. But he continues to say, we gravitate from one pleasure or amusement to another, gain a livelihood of what somebody else is assigned, so on and so on. And again, I still think of this and just go, so what? Does it help you get through life? Does it help you enjoy life? If so, then there's nothing wrong with it. Even the job, we're talking here about, if your parents want you to go to college because they want you to be successful and self-sufficient, and you end up with a job that doesn't really fire you up, you're not really passionate about it, should you just quit it and not do it? No, because the job might provide other things that you are passionate about. What is it that leads to this thing that we mentioned earlier? To live a life to the fullest, a fulfilling life. The problem is that we talk about it like it's the same for everybody. I wonder how many of you in here are just passionate about traveling. You really want to travel. And there are some of you who are like, I'll say I want to travel because everybody else wants to, but you don't really even care what's over in Chula Vista, much less what's over in Vietnam or Australia. Or maybe it's the kind of thing where like you want to have been there, but you don't want to go through all the hassle of going over there. And so you're thinking like, well, why did I go to Paris when there's an Eiffel Tower in Vegas? Oh, and a pyramid. I might as well just go there. Yeah, and ancient Rome, all in one place. Why not just go there? And some people will look at this and be like, oh, come on, don't you want to live? We're all living. The question is it fulfilling for us? And for some people, having a spouse, a couch, and a Netflix account, that's enough for life for them. And for them, that really is living. And they wake up every day, they go to work, come home, because that's what they want to come home to. And maybe even in their mind, a couple of children as well. And they'll be like, that's living life to the fullest. And then someone, as I said that last period, somebody said, oh, hell no, that sounds like a living hell for him. He said, I want to go out and I want to experience things and take chances and take risks and really take in as much as I possibly can of the world. Dope. That's for him, living life to the fullest. My point is that any of these things up here can be living life to the fullest if it's the things that you really want. It's weird how we shame people for the things that they want and the things that they like. I'll say it. I hate shrimp. And reggae sucks. I know everybody's like, reggae, no, reggae's not good. It's okay. You're in a safe space. You can admit that reggae sucks. Any music that you have to get high to understand and appreciate sucks. Because it's not the music doing the work, it's the drugs doing the work. And then you have to take the drugs and you're like, oh, I guess it's okay, yeah. No, reggae sucks. I stand by that. I'll fight you. Yeah.
You don't need that. Reggae is amazing. The beat, listen.
What beat?
Listen, so the beats that I have, it helps me fall asleep.
Do you see the problem?
Really?
It's so fire. I listen to it.
No, it's a calming type of like genre.
That's the drugs. It's not the music.
I don't do drugs.
Oh yeah, none of us do.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it makes you fall asleep because it sucks.
No, it's not what it does at all.
Some of you hate reading, and so you'd be like, you know what I do to fall asleep? I read.
Alright, you're lucky I read that. I hate reading.
I'm just telling you, reggae sucks. And it's okay to say it. Shrimp. I don't like any seafood. People will be like, oh my god, you don't like seafood? No. What? I guess you have to say it louder. I don't like seafood. But have you ever had, and they'll mention like something that they've had. I'm like, yeah, I've had that before. And you don't like it? And they ask this silly question, why not? How do you explain that you don't like the way that it tastes? I don't like the taste. And I usually just say, I don't like the way it tastes. Oh man, so they accept that answer. Wasn't that the obvious answer from the get-go? You don't like it. Why? I don't like the way it tastes. Oh man, okay, I guess that explains it. What other reason would there be? How many of you in here are basically tone deaf, and you like reggae? See, the one guy's not paying attention. Two guys who are not paying attention. How many of you in here like seafood? Nasty shit. We have different conceptions of the good. We have different conceptions of good music. We have different conceptions of the good life. And I think I mentioned before that if you were to ask your parents, this might be good to do. Ask your parents, what do you want from me in life? What would you want from me? And see what your parents say. I wonder if they would say, I just want you to be happy. Okay. Stalin's mom wanted him just to be happy and pursue his dreams. I wonder if they would say, I just want you to be healthy. Like I know people who, when they're having children, they'll be like, 10 fingers and 10 toes, that's it. They're happy with that, yeah. Until they get tested in 6th grade, then all of a sudden you wish you had more. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's true. Sometimes I look at people, I'm like, your dad can't be proud. I mean, assuming he was around, he couldn't be proud of this, you know? Or I guess that maybe explains why you are the way that you are. The other day I was standing out here, I was after, I think it was, maybe it was during nutrition, I can't remember. I saw these 5 Edgars all walking together, and they all had the exact same puffy jacket, you know? Exact same haircut. Look, sorry, there was one crazy guy in the group, his was brown instead of black, but everybody else's puffy jacket was black. You know, he's the one guy that's like, oh yeah, he's the rebel, his is brown instead of black. They all have the same haircut, they're walking the same way, they all say fool the same way. Do you think that they look at themselves and say, hey fool, you ever notice that we're all the same? No, they're living a life to the fullest. And I look at them and I'm like, how could you have that haircut and be happy? And then they all look at me and go, how could you not have hair and be happy? And then I would plant drugs on them and call the police. Because who are they going to believe? We have different conceptions of what it is to live life to the fullest, of what the good is. That's all, whatever, but we'll shame people for not liking seafood, for not liking, reggae or whatever. But this last part that strikes me, man. So without having made the slightest difference of any unique significance, we're going to die and decay like any animal. How can you know? How can you know? That's a pessimistic view. I'm going to die and have no difference get made in my life. Maybe you know the Van Gogh, the painter? Yeah. He was a painter who, as I just said, dies relatively young. I want to say 42, if I'm not mistaken. He deleted himself. He was famous for having cut his own ear off and then painting himself with a bandage over his ear. Yeah, most of his paintings are they're very self-reflective. This is a guy who went through incredible personal pain, man. And yet somehow he manages to take all of that pain and transform it into beauty. And when he dies, if I'm not mistaken, I think he only sold like 3 or 4 paintings in his lifetime. And someone in the second period said that he only sold one for $2. What would be in modern money, $2. And you just think, wow, that would be a hell of an investment. He's worth like $120 million today. His collection of paintings is worth more than the GDP of like half the countries in the world. That's how much his paintings are worth today. And yet that guy died miserable, crying, lonely, thinking he was a complete abject failure. Imagine if we could go back in time, grab Van Gogh and bring him into the modern era and take him to a museum or give him an art book and let him see what his art has become. I wonder how many people do that. They die thinking they're complete failures. And yet, fast forward, man, you can't see the impact that you're going to have. I really mean that. You cannot see the impact that you're going to have. Some of you who babysit little kids, you'll understand exactly what I mean when I say that. You know, you can take a little kid and you decide that you're going to become a teacher and you're going to teach him math or something. I don't know. I see this all the time. People think like, you know what? My teachers were always terrible. I know how to teach. I'm going to teach this little kid math or tutor them or whatever. You know, try to teach them like the concepts of 1 + 1 and everything. Eventually you get frustrated because they're just like blurbing whatever toddlers say. And then as you go to turn away, you bump your arm into the table. You're like, oh, shit. And then finally the little kid goes, shit. Now he's teachable. You're like, no, don't say that. Shit. Shit. That one thing they're really good at remembering, but everything else you teach them is gone. Now, what impact is that going to have? The point is just that it had an impact that you didn't even mean to have, and the stuff that you were trying to be impactful for wasn't having an impact. And I wonder if we were to grab you today and take you into the year 2124 and see what the world, how different the world would be because of you. In other words, did you have kids? Did you start a business? Did you do some philanthropic work that saved some lives, that had some people leaning forward? Did you make a painting? Did you make a song? Did you do something that has a lasting impact? Because at one point in the 18th century, there was a farmer who ended up in an arranged marriage in Austria. And I don't even know what his name was. They had 9 children, 6 of whom survived, 3 died childbirth. Of those 9, the eldest one inherited the farm. The other ones had to go off and make their life, in the world. That one guy had 11 children, I think. I think 6 of those 11 survived. And then one of those 6, one of them had another kid, but he had to move to a city because of the changing demographics. So while he was there, he met somebody, had a child, and that child's name is Albert Einstein. Could you possibly know the impact that you're going to have? I think that farmer back in the 18th century was like, someday I'm going to have a great-great-great-grandchild who's going to change the universe, our conception of the universe. Yeah. And that's the point, is that what you're doing as you're living, you've got 2 ways of approaching life. You can approach it from this perspective of nothing matters, because we're going to decay and die like any animal, and that sucks because there's no other animal that's self-aware the way that we are. There's no other animal that's self-conscious the way that we are. It just doesn't seem fair that we're going to die like a slug. And so therefore nothing matters. Or you could approach it from another perspective, which is, I don't know if nothing matters. But if nothing matters, then what's the worst case scenario if I live like it does matter? You can't go wrong if you live like it matters. It might turn out that everything matters. But the worst case scenario is to believe, the worst case scenario of the positive belief is better than the best case of the other side. I'll show you guys something, actually. It'll piss some of you off, but what good is a philosopher who doesn't piss people off, It was once explained to me by a friend of mine who does mathematics. And he introduced me to this concept when I was in college. It looks, let's see if I don't mess this up. He's a smarter man than I am. He asked me at one point if I believed in God. I said, dude, yeah, well, small conversation for Saturday, right? And I said, I don't know. And he says, well, you basically got these 2 possibilities, right? That you believe or don't believe. I said, yeah, I suppose so. And then he said, you've got these basic possibilities that God either exists or he doesn't exist. I said, yeah. So he said, it's a pretty simple equation. He was working this thing out. It's belief and existence. And he said, what happens, let's say that it turns out that you don't believe in God and he doesn't exist. What's the ultimate outcome of that? Doesn't matter. You live your whole life, and afterwards you die, you pass into unconsciousness, and that's it. Nothing. What happens if you don't believe in God, but it turns out He does exist? Oh, you're in deep trouble. You're in really deep trouble. What happens if you believe and He doesn't exist? It's still kind of a win, because you lived a good life, you've done the right thing by people, and you've lived a positive example of a life. What happens if you believe and He does exist? Man, there's no greater reward in the universe than that. And I thought, it's an interesting way of seeing it. And so he said, so the best case scenario of not believing is nothingness. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario of believing is nothingness, but a positive impact in the life that you leave behind. So the best case scenario of the non-belief is equal to the worst case scenario of the belief. And I thought, So he said to me, I don't know, maybe at least live like you believe. It goes beyond religion, though. Maybe, what's the worst case scenario of believing that your life has no meaning and you live that way? It's a wasted life, man. It's terrible for not just you, but everybody around you. And it makes no positive difference. What if it turns out that you live like you do believe, that you do believe that your life has meaning and purpose to it, and it turns out it doesn't? You won't know otherwise, because you'll be dead, but all the while, you'll be living a positive life that positively impacts people around you. But what if it turns out that you live as though you believe that your life has meaning, and then it turns out it does? That's an incredible win, man. And so maybe keep living as though you believe that your life has a meaning and a purpose to it. And keep living until you find it, because it's there. And if it turns out I'm wrong, and there is no meaning and purpose in it, at least you'll have lived a positive life. So, I guess I'm saying is bet on red, because you can't go wrong with it. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Thursday. As I told the last two periods, I'll be goddamned if I let Richard Taylor destroy our Thanksgiving break by sending us off with something negative. And that picture right there where he's judging us, he is judging us. I chose that picture on purpose.